despite all the terrible things I was saying earlier today, I'm really proud to bring on a good friend, a person we really miss in Congress. He's a great district attorney. He's a great congressman. He's a great guy, and my good friend, even though he's probably going to attack me once he gets the microphone, Dan Donovan. Dan, good to have you back.
Hey, Frank, you told me I was going to be on with Joe. I've been waiting. I've been out of Congress since January 3rd. I've been waiting 9 months to get on this show, and you give me King?
We all have to slum it once in a while, Dan.
Hey, if there's anybody that could sit in that stool when Joe's not there, it's my buddy Pete King. Hey, buddy, how are you?
Fine doing, Dan. How are you doing, Dan?
I'm doing terrific. I don't want to entice you how good private life is because we need you in Congress. And let me take this opportunity to tell all of Joe's listeners how admired you are, what a great member of Congress you are, and how our country is a better place because of the sacrifices you've made over the last 28 years. You and your family, Rosemary, as well, sacrificing family events and everything else down in Washington, protecting our beliefs, our Constitution. I personally thank you, my friend, as a citizen of this great nation for all you've done for us.
Well, thank you, David. Dan, not to make this mutual admiration, but I want to, again, say that your work as a congressman and as district attorney before that was really phenomenal. And how is Serena doing with you, having to put up with you now? I mean, she was with you for 3 or 4 days a week there for a couple of years.
It's real funny when after I lost the election in November and then I come home in January and everybody kept asking Serena, so how's Dan? How's he doing? Is he okay? And she kept saying, what about him? What about me? He's home all the time now. I mean, the baby had a routine. I came home and I disrupted everything, Joe.
Dan, how does Congress look from the vantage point of Staten Island now? I mean, when you're there and you're in the middle of it, as you and I know, sitting in the back row there, you get, with our good friend Frank Lobiando and Rodney Frelinghuysen, you sort of get caught up in the day-to-day activities. You do the best job you can, but sometimes you don't see how it's all being perceived by the public. So now that you're 250 miles away, how does it look to you?
It looks as chaotic as it was when we saw it from right being on the floor of the House. What's not obvious to most people is what goes into all the work that you and your colleagues do and how time-consuming it is, and the amount of effort you have to put in, and the amount of negotiations that go on to get a piece of legislation done that will better the lives of Americans. It's a tedious job, and it looks to the outsiders as they just sit down there for a couple of days and then come up with something that's not very valuable to America, and then all go home and ask us to vote for them again, and that's just simply not true. I've been able to see it from both sides, Pete, seeing how it's done, how the sausage is made, and then seeing it as a private citizen. I have a better understanding and better appreciation for what our government officials do. I was in public life for 32 years before being, I was the deputy borough president of Staten Island. I was chief of staff to the borough president. I was an assistant for the great DA Bob Morgenthau for 8 years. Seeing it as a citizen for the first time in a long time gives me a better appreciation because I know what it takes and what you guys are doing down there. And so I don't think most people look at it in the same perspective as I do. When I see something come out of Washington, I actually can tell how long it took you guys to get it done and the great work that you're doing just to get something to help the lives of our citizens. So it's a little bit different for me. I listen to people now on the street differently. I'm no longer the bum, it's you bums. But yes, listen, the one thing about Staten Island is they're not afraid to tell you what they think. And let me tell you the other thing. It's been very heartwarming for me and my family, the amount of outpour of support and people still thanking me for what I did for them for the short period of time I was in Congress. So, they're in tune to what's happening. They just want progress. They want things to move along. And sometimes, as we know, it takes a little bit longer. We used to say in law, the wheels of justice move slowly, while the wheels of Congress move a bit slower. But hopefully that time that it takes to do something results in something great.
Dan, along those lines, talking to the people in Staten Island and Brooklyn, what is the reaction to President Trump? And I'm not expecting you to take the partisan line. I mean, now that you're out of the business, quote unquote, do people talk to you more honestly? Do they talk to you more directly? What do they tell you about President Trump?
Well, there's a real divide. We're a Democratic congressional district, despite the fact that my voters voted for me as a Republican, and I am bipartisan now. I took over a think tank at Wagner College, a nonpartisan think tank, so I have to remain nonpartisan. But there's a real divide here, Pete, and I suspect that throughout the country, the real hardcore president supporters are still real hardcore supporters of President Trump. And those who had opposed him in the past are even more vocal and in more opposition now than they were before. I think it's going to be very interesting what happens next year. I think one of the indicators is going to be voter turnout. I think there's a possibility that many of Hillary Clinton's supporters in 2016 stayed home because they didn't think she was going to lose. I know now those folks may come out in droves, particularly here in New York. But I don't think the president expects to win New York anyhow. But that's the feeling I'm getting on the ground. The hard Trump supporters are still hard Trump supporters, and those who are opposed to the president are still very vocal and hard in their opposition.
Dan, what I found in the last several presidential elections are that the votes in my district on Long Island and your district in Staten Island in the presidential years are roughly the same, and they were also similar to what you'd see in Ohio and states like that. So I think, again, if we can get a good reaction or a solid reaction in Staten Island or in your district, is an indication how other states around the country are going to do. Not how New York State overall is going to do, but from that perspective also, what are you hearing from voters about the Democratic primary as to who see, and again, I'm trying to make this bipartisan, who do they see emerging as the candidate, who's exciting them and who's turning them off?
Yeah, there's some great support. I think a lot of people sitting on the sidelines waiting for the field to thin out, Joe. I think there's about 20 to 22 candidates still in the race. We've had some people depart. Senator Gillibrand from New York has dropped out of the race, a number of others. So I think people who hadn't been Bernie supporters in the past, hadn't been Elizabeth Warren supporters in the past, hadn't been Joe Biden supporters in the past, are waiting for the field to thin out a little bit to pledge their support to anyone. And I suspect that'll happen over time. You've been involved in many presidential races. The amount of time and the cost of running a presidential election forces some people who may have been good candidates not to continue with their candidacy just because they can't raise the money or they can't go on the support. Right now, when you see a poll and you see that the leading candidate has 30%, well, 30% doesn't win an election. Maybe it does if there's 20 candidates, but there won't be 20 candidates at the end. So it's going to be real interesting as people drop off. Where do their supporters go? Not that he has any, but if Bill de Blasio drops out, where do those two people go? And so forth throughout as people drop out. And then you'll see, I think, a couple of front runners. There'll probably be 5 or 6 at the end who have a real shot at getting the nomination, I believe. And it'll be very interesting to see what happens with those who drop out, where their support goes.
Dan, how much contact do you keep with now community groups, people that, let's say, you dealt with before as a member of Congress? Do you still see them? Do you still run into them? How does that work?
Yeah, I do. I've taken a low profile. I always thought that the office, any office that I held, was about the office and it wasn't about me. And I never I've never criticized any of my successes. I haven't criticized the current member of Congress that's representing our district now, and I had pledged to him that I would not do that because the job's too difficult to begin with. And you don't need somebody who had been there before telling you what you're doing wrong. So I've taken a low profile, but as I said before, the kindness of the people of Staten Island, South Brooklyn, and Serena and I and the baby are out and about. The other day we went to the park and fed ducks. We had stale bread and Yellow Rose is throwing the bread to the ducks. And 2 people walked by and yelled, "Hey, Congressman, we need you back." It's very kind of the folks to show their appreciation. They could have walked by and thought it and never said it, but they took the time out to say it. It was very, very kind, and it's heartwarming for myself and my family. So I haven't been out and about. The position I've taken at Wagner will put me out in the public a little bit more than I have been for the last 9 months. I've been spending a lot of time with my family, a lot of time putting my career back together. But when I'm out and about, at the local diner and stuff, it's still great to see some of my old friends who come up and give their support and their kindness to me and my family.
Dan, most importantly of all, how is your daughter reacting to having Dad home all the time now?
She loves it. It's funny, I've told everybody, I haven't said it publicly, but I wasn't going to run again in 2020 if I was successful last November. It's gotten to be as great of a job as it is to be a member of Congress or to be in public life. It's gotten so personal, the campaign stuff, Pete, and some horrible things were said about myself during a primary I had last year and during the general election. And my daughter was only 3.5 years old at the time. She didn't understand it. Nobody was saying anything to her. 2 years from now, she'd be 5.5, and kids would be coming to school and saying, my mother got a piece of literature in the mail that said, your father did this, when there's no truth to it. And I never wanted to expose her to that. So my public life was going to be over after this term if I was successful regardless. But I'm loving, I don't know if she's loving it, but I'm loving being home with her. It's terrific to be with the family. I just dropped her off at school. Frankie Five Boroughs asked me if I could go on at 8:30 this morning instead of 9:30. I told him I have to take the baby to school. Frank, I'm sorry. Pete comes second.
By the way, Frank wants to talk to you, and I know that he says that he made you who you are. So I'm turning the microphone over to Frankie Five Boroughs.
Oh, Dan, well, it's good to talk with you again, and obviously, we're all big fans of yours, and on a personal level, it's been great knowing you over the last 15 years and coming to view you as a pretty close friend. So it's great to see you still working so hard. Any chance, though, we might see you return to public life in some other capacity?
Well, I won't be running for any office, right? I tell people I'm running from things now, not for things. But if an opportunity came where I thought I could serve my city, my community, my country in some appointed position, I would consider it. But right now, there's nothing like that on the horizon. The only thing I have on my map now going forward is a wedding on September 28th that I must attend. Because the only reason I have to go is because I want to see it, because I won't believe it unless I'm there.
And as long as that wedding's not yours, I know Serena will be happy, right? All right, thank you, Dan. We'll talk with you soon, my friend.